What's up YouTube, Dyer here from Zephyr Wargames, bringing you an Elementsaber deck profile. Now, I will highly recommend picking up the core Elementsaber monsters, the new ones right now while they're certainly cheap. I think most of the Ultras are going for about £4 each at maximum. And then we do have Moon and Glacier and Grand Soil both getting reprints in the special editions of Flames of Destruction. And then they will, obviously, that means Grand Soil will be coming back with its errata. So pick them up cheaply while you can. Do not invest heavily in the Moon and Glacier right now because it obviously is getting a reprint. Unless you definitely want the secret, it does look amazing. But that is just my first bit of advice before we get this started. And we're going to go through it, and it's going to be a fun little deck profile. This won't top on the meta, but it's definitely a deck that I, as soon as I knew they were announced, wanted to get hold of and play. And we want to see what they can do. So let me take you through the deck profile from top to bottom and explain what we've got and why we've got it. So, we have triple Elementsaber Milio. This is really, really cool. I love the artwork. Very, very nice. And it's once per turn. Quick effect, the same as all other Elementsabers. You can send... His effect is once per turn, quick effect. You can send one Elementsaber monster from your hand to the graveyard. Then target one face-up monster on the field. Change it to face-down defense position. So it's a walking, talking Book of Moon with 1900 attack. Once per turn, if this card is in the graveyard, you declare one attribute. This card in the graveyard becomes an attribute until the end of the turn. So the exact same as all the other Elementsabers. We've got Lapulia. Once per turn, when a spell or trap card is activated, quick effect, you send one Elementsaber monster from your hand to the graveyard, negate the activation, and if you do, destroy it. So it's very, very good. Gets you out of evening matches, gets you out of the new Infinity Transcendence trap. And then again, it has the graveyard element changing effect. We've then got triple Elementsaber Makini. Again, this one is send one Elementsaber monster from your hand to the graveyard and add an Elementsaber or Elemental Lord monster from your deck to your hand. So she is your Rhoda for all of your little guys as well as your big beat stick monsters. We've got another core card here, and that is triple Elementsaber Lapulia Mana. A really, really cool card. Very, very powerful. You can send two other monsters from your hand to the graveyard to special summon this card from your hand. You can only use this this effect of Elemental Lapulia Mana once per turn. Apply the following effects to Elementsaber and Elemental Lord monsters you control, depending on the original attribute of any Elementsaber monster sent to the graveyard to activate this effect. So if you send Earth or Wind, it can't be destroyed by battle. Water or Fire cannot be destroyed by effects. Light or Dark, your opponent cannot target them with card effects. So, if you have this guy, Moon and Glacier, any of your other Elementsabers on the board, this protects all of them. Very, very powerful. Especially, ideally, you want your Earth and you want your Wind in the graveyard, so it's not the end of the world of getting one of them two to the grave to bring this guy out. And then by using the field spell, it lets you send from your deck instead, and that's where the synergy comes, and that's where the power play comes. We've then got triple Elementsaber Anya. Once per turn, you can send one Elementsaber monster from your hand to the graveyard, target an Elementsaber monster except herself, or Elemental Lord monster that has been properly summoned in the graveyard. Special summon it, ignoring its summoning conditions. Once per turn, if this card is in the graveyard, declare an attribute and change it. So, as long as you have correctly summoned your Moon and Glacier, she can bring it back. And that's what's very, very powerful, is it ignores its summoning conditions. For the last of the Elemental Sabers, these are just the ones that I'm trialing out right now. We've got two Mallow, which is basically you send an Elementsaber monster from your hand or from your hand to the graveyard. Send one Elementsaber or an Elemental Lord from your deck to the graveyard. So here's your extra Foolish Burial. And then I'm trialing out the Nulu, just because, again, it's water, so it helps your Moon and Glacier. It also has the graveyard effect, and it lets you recycle. So you target an Elementsaber or Elemental Lord monster in your graveyard, except herself, and add it to your hand. So this could be very, very powerful if you wanted to loop Moon and Glacier more than once. It'll be more important when Grand Soul comes back. But for now, I'm trialing her out, see how she does, and see if she works really, really well in this deck. I'm then playing to finish off the rest of the element kind of monsters or cards is the new Elemental Lord, the Thunder one. So it can't be normal summoned or set, must be special summoned from your hand by having exactly 5 light monsters in your graveyard, which is very, very easy to do when all your Elementsabers can change their attributes. When this card is special summoned, you can destroy all monsters your opponent controls. Only use each effect once per turn. If this face-up card leaves the field, skip the battle phase of your next turn. You know, the field spell makes you do that anyway, so it's not the end of the world on that. But a walking, talking, searching Regeki that could be revived as well, ignoring its summoning conditions, is very, very powerful. And it's only when it's special summoned that its effect goes off. So Anya can actually help you Regeki your opponent's board. And then Moon and Glacier, which is probably the hardest one to get, which is what takes this deck out of being budget. So if you want to get the deck budget, you can play it without Mooning Glacier for now until it gets its reprint. But right now, this card is powerful as heck. So must be special summoned from your hand by having exactly 5 water monsters in your graveyard, and cannot be special summoned by other ways. When this card is special summoned, discard 2 random cards from your opponent's hand for or their entire hand if it's less than 2. Only use each effect of Mooning Glacier once per turn. If this card leaves the field, skip the battle phase your next turn. Again, your field spell's doing that for you anyway, so do not worry about that clause. And then the ability to go cool, and then somehow it ends up in the graveyard, and then use Anier's effect to bring it back and rip another 2 from your opponent's hand would be busted as hell. Like, you know, you leave your opponent starting their turn, even though you're skipping your next battle phase, you're leaving your opponent starting their turn with 2 cards. Now, if your opponent can play their deck out with 2 cards, then fair play to them. They've obviously done really, really well. But any player, no matter how good or bad you are, if you're having to start your turn with 2 cards in hand and a Mooning Glacier to deal with on board, you know, there's not a lot you can actually do for that. We've then got 2 Destrudo. This again gets you into your Ancient Fairy Dragon plays because you want to be seeing your field spell as soon as you can. And the best thing with Ancient Fairy Dragon is, yes, it means you can't do your battle phase. Who cares? You make that, you can then get to special summon any of your lower Elementsabers, ideally Paulia. You've then got a Link Monster on board, you've got a Negator on board, and you've got your field spell on board. So you've got a holy trinity there that your opponent's going to struggle to deal with. We've then got 2 of my favourite cards to put in this deck, and that is Dark Armored Dragon, because you can change all the attributes, and the most favourite one, and that is Blackluster Soldier, Envoy of the Beginning. You don't have to play these are just personal choices of mine. I think it's really, really cool, because you can change all the attributes in the graveyard, and there's no limitation to what attribute they become. BLS can be incredibly powerful in this deck. To be able to just go, cool, get rid of those 2, and in turn of that, you could then actually help yourself adapt your graveyard to go into something like Dark Armed Dragon, and of course your Mooning Glacier or the Thunder King as well, purely because you've just got insane beaters on board. You've got to be very careful not to brick your hand out, because yeah, of course, we do have 6 cards that could brick your hand out technically, not including the Lapulia up here. So you've got to be very, very careful with what you do. The best thing about the Shrewdo as well is because it recycles itself back to the bottom of the deck. Both a blessing and a curse, it means it doesn't disrupt you having X amount of darks in your graveyard. But on top of that, it could also be what gets you the next game win. So that's it for the monster lineup. Like you saw, very, very heavy on the Elementsaber monsters, which is cause what you need. And then a couple of nice beat sticks in there to help push you through for game. We've then got Triple Palace of the Elemental Lords. This card is awesome. All monsters, so not just Element Lords, you control gain attack and defense equal to the number of different attributes in the graveyard times 200. Once per turn, you can add 1 Elementsaber monster from your deck to your hand, but skip the battle phase of your next turn, even if this card leaves the field. Once per turn, if an Elementsaber monster in your hand or field would send a card or cards from the hand to the graveyard to activate an effect, you can send that many Elementsaber monsters from your deck to the graveyard instead. So, you only get locked out of your battle phase if you search. However, if you want to be using the field spell to send from your deck to the graveyard rather than using from your hand, that is why it's so important, which is why we play triple terraforming. You know, you need the triple terraforming in there to get to it. We also play doubles Dragon Ravine to get you to your Ancient Fairy Dragon, and the 1 set rotation to kind of partly interrupt your opponent as well as, but then on top of that, you've got your Dragon's Ravine that can help unclog your hand, put your Destrudo to grave, go into your Ancient Fairy Dragon, get the right monsters on board, and start dealing interruptives to your opponent. And then we've got the 1 Roader because all of our main monsters are warriors and they are level 4 or lower, so searching for days. Then last up for the spells, we've got Triple Scapegoat. Now this is something I'm trialing out myself, again, just to get me into the Nightmare Link monsters, giving me additional draws, which is one thing the Elementsaber deck kind of lacks. Also providing me with a bit of defensive capability should my opponent get past my board, and kind of move my plays that way. So Scapegoat is a trial card at this moment in time, but it's just to give the Nightmares a decent run out in the deck to see how effective they can be. Not to mention kind of move my plays even further forward, to help kind of extend the extra deck usage and push me through for games and get, like I said, the consistency into the deck that it very, very, very badly needs at certain points. Okay, so now on to the traps, and we only play 3, and the reason we play 3 is these 3 are busted as hell. Elemental Training. Love the artwork, Absolutely beautiful artwork. Your opponent cannot target Palace of the Elemental Lords you control with card effects. Also, it cannot be destroyed by card effects, so it's very, very nice. It protects your field spell, which is the bread and butter of the deck. Once per turn, you contribute one monster, special summon one Elementsaber monster from your deck with a different original attribute than that monster's. You can send this face-up card from the field to the graveyard, discard your entire hand, then add an Elemental Lord monster from your graveyard to your hand equal to the number of cards discarded. Don't worry too much about that one. It's more the ability of tributing off and replacing, so you get to bump up your levels, get the cards in the graveyard that you need, and help you push through for the power plays of this deck. Now onto the extra deck. So we'll start off with the Link monsters, going from Link 1 all the way up to Link 4. So we play the 1 Link Spider. You can play 2 if you wish. That is entirely up to you. I think the biggest issue I've kind of got with this deck right now, or what I still need to test out in a bit more depth, is the amount of Link 2s that I've got, because I do have quite a few. So we've got the 1 Isolde. You can play Isolde at 2. You can also put in equip spells to make Isolde a little bit more consistent. The best way for Isolde to be effective, though, is to have the ability of playing 2 equip spells, because your Elementsabers, your lowest levels are 2. It does get you your Anya to board, but it means you have to play 2 equipped spells, which can clog and slow the deck down a bit. We then obviously have another good handful of Link 2s, and that is our Proxy Dragon for our token kind of plays. We've then got the Nightmare Goblin, the Nightmare Phoenix, and the Nightmare Cerberus. These are just here to add us for additional draws if they're co-linked, as well as having the ability to unclog our hand should we need to fill up our graveyard for a bit more power play and push plays, as well as granting their own effects. Now obviously, for those of you who don't know, Phoenix, you discard and you get to pop a spell or trap card your opponent controls. Cerberus, you get to discard and pop a monster, a special summon monster your opponent controls in the main monster zone. And then Nightmare Goblin, discard 1 card, and if this card was co-linked with this card was activated, you can draw 1 card. Also, during the main phase, you can normal summon 1 monster from your hand to a zone this card points to, in addition to your normal summon or set. You can only apply this effect once per turn. So the worst thing about Goblin is he needs to be further down, which is why the tokens are so important, because you go into token 1, you'd go into Link Spider, you would then have to you could technically play a second Link Spider to make another Link Spider, then use a token and another Link Spider to go into your Phoenix. Phoenix will give you the draw, or of course you can go to your Goblin, but Goblin won't be co-linked, so you won't get the draw, but it will give you that additional normal summon. So there's a lot of plays that the tokens can actually provide, which is why I'm trialing them out over like focusing on the Isolde play. If you want to focus on the Isolde play, by all means do so. I'm just trying out the Nightmare plays to see how much consistency they can add to the deck, and then giving me the additional draws. For our Link 3s, we've got the 1 Deco Talker and the 1 Topologic Trisbenia. You don't have to play Trisbenia. This is just because it's new and I want to try it out in this deck. It is very, very powerful. If a monster or monsters is special summoned to a zone or zones this card points to, banish as many of those monsters as possible, also as many spells and trap cards on the field as possible, and if you do, inflict 500 damage to your opponent for each of their cards banished by this effect. This is a nice one to get past Pendulum Magicians if they're still a thing in the upcoming months or upcoming weeks, because it might be changing with the ban list, but it can really, really hurt your opponent because you can get rid of their spells and traps, and kind of by banishing them, you're always causing issues, especially against Dracos as well. This could be incredibly powerful. Then for our last Link 3, we've got the Nightmare Unicorn. You might not use this as much, but if this card is link summoned, you discard a card, then target 1 card on the field, return it to the deck. Then if this card was co-linked, you get to draw a card. You can only use the effect Unicorn once per turn. While any co-linked Nightmare monster are on the field, for your normal draw, if you're in your draw phase, draw 1 card for each additional card, each different card name among those co-linked Nightmare monsters, instead of drawing just 1 card. So additional draw power. And then that's why we've got the Griffin. The higher level ones, these 2 here, aren't that pivotal. You can take them out. So again, if this card is co-linked, is link summoned, you can discard 1 card, target 1 spell or trap card in your graveyard, set it on your field, but it cannot be activated this turn. Then if this card was co-linked with the effect was activated, you can draw 1 card. You can only use the effect of Griffin once per turn. Special summon monsters on the field cannot activate their effects unless they are linked. So again, that's another little lockout if you need to. And if you look at Paulia Mana, the big one, its effect actually is a continuous, not an activated, so that can be very, very useful. You've got the one Borreload and the one Saruja to finish it off. Again, these aren't set in stone. Some of the bigger ones aren't set in stone. The only one I would say is highly advised is Saruja. The other three are then down to you, personal preferences. We've then got the one Black Rose for board wipes, the one Ancient Fairy Dragon. So you've got your Black Rose as an alternative if you want to make your Destrudo plays and you've already used and abused everything you need to around Ancient Fairy Dragon. Or you make Ancient Fairy Dragon and, like I said, special summon one from your hand, giving you a negate on board, as well as getting the field spell you need that can then, on top of that, help you flood the board with your Elementsabers. And then finally, the one Baguska, because this is, you do have a couple of level 4s in this deck, and Baguska can be very, very powerful and very, very useful to kind of help you out problematic boards, which sometimes you do need to go into a Baguska first to negate all the effects on the field, and then maybe start extending your plays with your spells and traps and whatnot, and then hit your opponent by getting rid of the Baguska, going into a Link monster, and then push your plays further forward for game. Anyway, that is it for the deck profile. I hope you liked it. I hope this helps. This is my, not my first kind of attempt at it, but this is the first physical build of this deck after a bit of testing, just to kind of see how it operates itself. And to give you guys a couple of ideas on it and give you the warning to go pick up your Elementsabers now while you can. It's definitely a fun deck to play. I'm not saying it's going to be meta, but at £4 an Ultra, maybe a little bit less, what's not to like about picking that up? Anyway, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share. Till next time, guys, as always, happy dueling.